Hi everyone, it's Tamara here for La La Land Crafts with another card making tutorial. This week I'm showing you the Scary Mansion card that I made with the Purr-fect Halloween clear stamp set and the Insta-Hop we did with Pear Blossom Press. I'm going to be doing some Copic colouring of the images and then showing you how I made my first ever light up card. It was so fun and I'm definitely going to be making more in the future. So let's get started. So I'm going to stamp out our images. So I'm going to be using two of the cats. So I'll be using this little like vampire kind of scary cat and also the cat with the pumpkin. So I'll just grab out my Misty, some Copic Express at Cardstock, and I'll just show you the stamping of one of the cats and then I'll do the other one off screen. I'm just using my Memento Tuxedo black ink and I like to make sure I've got a double stamp so I get a nice clear impression. So I'll just put on some music now while I do the colouring. So as this image had that hanging spider, I didn't want to run it through my brother scan and cut because I was worried that it might cut it off. So I'm just going to fussy cut that out so that spider stays intact. And then I'm just going to grab out my craft knife and cut out all the openings next to the hat and also the eyes, nose and mouth, because that will form part of my light up portion of my card with the lights coming through the eyes and mouth of the pumpkin. So I'll just show you my cutting out the one of the eyes and the nose, and I do the rest of the cutting out off camera, but this is just to give you the general idea of how to cut that out. For my house wall, I wanted to create a panel that I can stick all my timber slats onto. So initially I cut it out at 9 inches by 7 inches, but when I went to run it through my die cutting machine to cut out my window later on, I realized it was just a little bit too wide, and I eventually cut it down to 9 inches by 6 inches, and that fit through my big shot perfectly. Now I also cut out a number of panels for my wall, and they measure 1¼ by 9 inches. And to kind of age them up and make the property look really spooky, I decided to just use some hickory smoke just to add a little bit of darkness, like the house hadn't been painted in a number of years. And that way it kind of also throws the shadow of those panels over the top of each of those layers of timber slats on the external. So I'll do the rest off screen, but this gives you a rough idea of how much ink I put on each of those panels. Now with that background panel in place, I'm just going to stick all my panels on. You'll see initially I put that on the wrong way. The actual shadow needs to go up the top. I realized thankfully before the glue had dried. Turn that over, and now we'll have the shadow up the top, and that way the next panel fits over that and it looks like it's throwing a shadow down onto that next panel. So I do the same all the way up, just leaving a small overlap of each of the slats, so it looks like a kind of timber slat house, and go right up, and so 2 more. And then eventually, as I said, I do cut this panel down, and I will have all the measurements in the description box below. So just out of smooth white cardstock, I'm going to cut out 2 of the shutters, and then also with the hickory smoke add some interest and darkening of colors up on those as well. I found using my actual blending brushes worked best for this because I didn't want too much of that ink on those panels. You will need a second piece of cardstock cut to the same size as your front panel, and that's where we'll set up the lights to match the same as the front of the panel. So it's much easier to have the same size, and that way you know everything will line up perfectly. For my window opening, I'm just measuring that with my T-ruler to make sure that the window frame is centered to my wall panel. So I've now cut my opening for the window, and that sits perfectly on that background panel. I also cut out one of the window panels from white cardstock and did age that up with the hickory smoke like I did with the wall panels. So I've grabbed out my tape runner, just adding that. It does run out halfway through, so I grabbed some score tape and just put some score tape on the bottom so that I can attach my piece of vellum to the card base. So we'll attach that to the front, and that will form our glass. So it looks kind of like it hasn't been cleaned for a while and very frosty. And that way we can now stick our window frame inside that opening as well, so that vellum will actually hold that in place. So just put a little bit of glue, line that up, and we'll get that sitting in our window frame. Now with these little edges, because I did want to offset them to make it look like the shutters were falling off the house, I just wanting to cut off part of that edge of the window shutter so that it kind of sits flush. So I'm measuring it the same amount as what's on the other edge of the window shutter itself, and that way it's going to be even on all sides. Just making sure I've got that straight, and that will fit onto our card front a lot better and make sure our lights and all the other elements will fit in. I did grab a shim for my cutting out of the lanterns because they are quite intricate with the openings. I just wanted to make sure that it cut perfectly the first time, and you can just see how well these get cut out, and all the pieces fall out perfectly to form our lanterns. Now to make our lights look like they're shining, like with a kind of candlelight, I've grabbed out some more vellum, and using a orange marker or yellow marker that I have in my stash, I've just colored that up so that it has a nice kind of orange glow to the back of that vellum and those lights, and it will just look really nice and eerie. So to make sure I'm getting the right size behind my lantern, I've just traced around it with a pencil, and you're just cutting on the inside of that lantern so that that fits perfectly behind. So it was a little bit tall, so now I've cut that perfectly to size. And just on the back of the image, just putting a little bit of glue so we can stick that vellum on the back. And now we've got the perfect kind of filtered light that's going to come through once our lights are in place. I'm going to be using the ticket die to kind of make a creepy sign for the side of the house. And I've grabbed out one of the sentiments from the set. There's so many to choose from, but I thought this worked really well with my scene. So just on some white cardstock with my ink, I'm just stamping that up twice. And because I was going to do some Copic colouring to make it look like kind of an age sign, I used Memento Tuxedo black ink. And then just using some kind of warm grey markers, I've coloured that up to look kind of like an age sign. Now I'm just going to place out where all my elements are going to sit so I know where to cut my openings. So obviously I've got some grass that will sit down below, and obviously we're going to work out where we're wanting the lights up the top. I want to make sure that they're even on both sides, though you could have made one look like it was partly falling down to make it look even more rustic, but I just thought we'll just keep them even. So I'm just kind of lining that up using my T-ruler to make sure that they're nice and straight, and I know exactly where to pop those holes into my lights. So I actually cut 2 extra lights so that I can just do that directly through the panel, because I'd already put my vellum on the back of the lights that I'm going to use for this card. So using a hole punch, I'm just cutting some holes in those spots, just lining where I've made my pencil marks with the opening. And you'll see me as I work through this, when I do test it out with all the lights, it's just not enough size. So I do recommend making sure you kind of get as much light coming through as possible. You'll need to use a bigger opening for your card. So now I've lined that up perfectly with the background panel where my lights will be. Because that's measured the same, it's going to be really easy just to use my pencil just to mark where I want my lights to be. And to make sure I don't miss them, I'm just going to put like circles around these to make sure I know exactly where I will need my lights to sit. Before we go any further, I'll just get that little cat stuck in the window. So we don't want to add any glue to the vellum because it will be seen from the other side. So I'm just kind of adding a little bit of glue where he touches areas that aren't near where any vellum is. I did get a little bit too much glue there, so I'm just wiping that off with my fingers and sticking him back down in place. Now, because you would be able to see where all my mechanisms of my lights would be if I didn't have this, I just grabbed some black cardstock from my stash, measured it to size, and we'll just get that stuck down over the top of that window so it looks like it's quite dark in the room, and that way it hides where all my light mechanism will be. So I'll be using the Easy Light for this card, and so it does have the 3 lights with it. That's why I chose 2 wall lights and then the other light to light up that pumpkin. So now I'm just grabbed out some tape that I've got in my stash, just lining up where I need it on those openings, which is really easy to see with my circles, making sure I'm getting it right in the exact spot, taping that down and making sure that they're in place. And now I'll grab some double-sided score tape and get our little mechanism attached down the bottom. So I'll just burnish that in place, take off the release paper and get that installed on our background panel. Now I just wanted to make sure that I had that all connected and it works perfectly. It's so easy to use. Everything is done for you. You just need to place it where you want it. But then I realized later on that when I have my grass down, it's going to actually go over where I need to have my push sign. So I'm just going to move that up a little bit. So just pull that off, making sure to remove any kind of stickiness from that score tape. I just use my anti-static powder tool and that takes off any stickiness off that old score tape. I put the score tape where I need my switch to be, get that stuck down, and that's going to be just nice and high above where that grass will sit. So that is the perfect spot. So now I just wanted to work out roughly where I need to stamp out my press here sign. So I've grabbed that out and just ink that up with my tuxedo black ink. Give that a nice stamp. And sorry, I'm doing that all off camera. And now I've got my press me sign ready for the recipient to know exactly what they need to do. So in hindsight, I should have actually tested out to see how much light was coming through these before I stuck them down. But obviously I just was like so eager to get this on and lit up that I just stuck them down straight away. But with that little single kind of hole punch to my wall panel behind these lights, it just wasn't enough light shining through to really illuminate it and really like show how good these lights are. And that was the same with my cat. I only had that single light as well down the bottom. Now I'm just working out where I want my shutters and where I need my cat to be, just so that I'm able to have those shutters look like they're falling off, and making sure that my cat is like, you know, one of the main things to be seen there. Again, I stick this cat down before testing out to see how much light comes through. So you will see me in a short while pull this cat off and cut out a larger opening for the light to shine through. You can just see it does still shine through, but not as much as what it does when I do finish making these holes bigger. So I'm just pulling that off. Thankfully the glue was still quite wet, and I do eventually lift those lights up as well and make those holes bigger, but I had to do that manually. With this one, at least I can run this through my die cutting machine with this opening, which is the perfect size to cut out the opening around that pumpkin and still have that hidden behind. So I just go off camera now to get that cut. So once I've done that, to make sure that I'm going to have enough room for everything now that I've made my openings bigger, I'm just going to pop those shutters partially falling off onto the front of the card, and this one hitting over to that light. And now you'll see me cover this big hole up with our cat, and so that does cover up the catastrophe that I did make there before, so you don't notice anything once that's in place. So we'll get our grass installed. So I want it kind of partially hanging off the edge. So I'm just putting a little bit down the bottom and making sure that's lined up with the bottom of the card. And then I'm just going to have this slightly overlapping and just hanging off the bottom on the right hand side as well. So we'll just line that up again with the bottom and make sure that's nice and straight and there's no excess glue squeezing out. Now I wanted the sign to look like it was falling off the wall of the house, so I'm just using a bit of foam tape and just kind of offsetting that at a crooked angle to make sure it looks like it's a sign falling off the wall. Now we also need to get some foam tape on the back of our panel, and we just need to be wary. You can put it over the actual kind of lines themselves, but just not on or near those lights, and that way you kind of give plenty of room for those lights to shine through. But you want to make sure you put plenty of foam tape to give this back your front panel a nice amount of support, and also put a bit around that light switch because obviously people will be pushing on that. So I'm just making sure that that's nice and close, but gives you enough room to press that button. So we'll just take all the release paper off, and I found it much easier. Initially I tried to kind of line it up against the table, but I found actually standing up and lining it up above, as you can see me pulling it off here, it was much easier to kind of line that up and push that on from the top. And you can see they light up perfectly. Now because this is quite a big card, I had to use 2 separate pieces of cardstock to create my card base. I just weighed one inch longer so that I could make a little tab for them to join them together, but I will have all the measurements in the description box below. Just pop on a bit of tape runner and we'll get that attached to the front of the card. And this is the finished card for this tutorial. These cats look super scared being in this scary mansion, and with these lights from Pear Blossom Press, they just make this card exceptional. I've had so much fun with this Insta-Hop, and I'm definitely going to be addicted now to making light up cards. I hope you've been able to follow along with the Insta-Hop and your chance to win, and I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button And if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.